another question that I wanted to ask Spencer, you mentioned towards the beginning of our discussion that working from home is tricky because your laptop is in your bedroom and you're working probably in your bedroom or your office. And so how do you create that time for yourself when your work is right there?
Yeah, I have to be honest, it can sometimes be a little tricky. It's not a super maybe natural, process, especially going to school or something, like physically, you're in a mental space of in the classroom or home, and kind of creating that divide can be a little challenging sometimes. Um, so I really think boundaries and people set their own boundaries. For me, I log in the morning, and I try to log off at like 5 when my company's workday is done. But sometimes there is things that I want to do, and I think this is going back a little bit to what we were talking about before about people liking really caring about what they do. For me, knowing that there's like an end project is so exciting, and there's a physical, tangible event that will come out of it is super motivating to me. Sometimes, I'm like, oh, I really want to just work on this, get this done, and do some research on this cool activity or whatnot. I can be a little tricky because I'm always in the mindset, well, something might come up tomorrow. I can just quickly get this done and then I won't have to think about it. But, setting boundaries for myself, after 9 o'clock, I really try to not touch anything. At that point, I need to just save for the next day. But I think another thing comes to mind is setting boundaries for yourself and thinking about how those might affect others. Um, I sometimes work really well, like late at night. If nobody can
Mhm.
email me, no one's sending me any pings, notifications, and I can really get some very tactile, like individual budgeting or things like that done. And a colleague of mine had set in her footer of her email, I might be sending an email late at night. The expectation is not for you to respond right now. This is just when I work really well. And I think that really stood out to me because sometimes I'll get an email and I'm like, oh, this needs to be done right now. Great. Like, let me just log on. But so I think it's being cautious and courteous about, okay, my boundaries, yes, work for me, but they have to work for everyone else. So that really
Mhm.
stuck out to me that she had included that in her footer. It's a great point. I'm working right now and this is when I work well, but this might not be when you
Yeah.
work well.
That's a really good thing right now that we have so many times when we're emailing or sending a text to somebody. And it might be, like you're saying, it might be the right time that I want to send it, but I'm not expecting somebody to answer it. And I know my husband always says, don't send that text now. You can't send a text this late. I'm like, well, they don't have to respond until they want to. But what do you think about that? That's kind of an interesting, I don't know. I think that's a really interesting thing that I feel like most people know that they don't have to respond until it's their time to respond. People know when there's something urgent, but it is interesting how we all send those texts and emails at whenever it's our time, our
It's
productive
Right.
time.
interesting, Valerie, because you mentioned working in a similar way. Like you'll be very productive in the morning until around 12, and then you need some time to take a break, and then you'll be really productive again beyond like 3. And after the typical working hours of 9 to 5. So I think that that's similar to the way Spencer mentioned that he feels productive around 7 to 10 or around that time frame.